you share two encounters that sound like very separate and different. One had to do with a missionary that was a martyr and made headlines at an island that God spoke to you about him, and then also your encounter in Israel with Jesus. So can you just take a moment to just share about these really vivid in depth encounters that you had and how it radically transformed you?
Yeah. So they are very different. And that is honestly what blew my mind as God began to connect the dots with these encounters. And so it was the original beginning of this, I guess, swirl for me. I wouldn't say the beginning of experiencing the groan by any means, but the beginning of the revelation that got unpacked from it was in Israel. In 2018, a group of us went and we went for the purposes of ministry and also to tour, but God stole me away. It was as if I was the beloved, and He was like, "You think you're going for ministry? That may happen, but you're going because I want you to encounter me in such a way that will change your life forever." And so I'm in the Garden of Gethsemane. We have it rented out for an hour we've got just for our team to be there for an hour, and we're like these spirit filled like fiery prophets, like we're ready to go, we're gonna do the thing, we're gonna show up the disciples who fell asleep on their watch. That's kind of like the attitude we have, like we're going to the Garden of Gethsemane, we're gonna we're gonna do the thing. And we get into the garden, and I kid you not, like for 45 minutes I felt nothing, I heard nothing, it was still. It was like the most frustrating. My mind wandered. It's one of the most frustrating experiences because in my heart, I'd hyped up this encounter that I was going to have with the Lord where He travailed, right? And to get in there, and it's like nothing. I'm flipping through my Bible, can't land on a passage. Now, I don't understand the prophetic reality of what's happening here. And so, about 15 minutes before we have to leave, I hear the voice of the Lord just clearly say this to me: "Tammie, do you want more?" And then, like it's almost like this gripping, grown, wordless encounter began on the inside of me. And I didn't have language, but all I had was tears. My stomach was gripped, and I knew that He wasn't inviting me into more of me. He wasn't inviting me into more fame, more glory for me. He was inviting me into a reality that Jesus even experienced in the Garden of Gethsemane. He had the opportunity to lay down His life for His bride in that garden of travail. And so, as He begins to speak this to me, the fear of the Lord comes on me, and I knew that I was standing at a crossroads with Him. Then we had to leave 15 minutes. All I had, like, I'm like, oh, great. Now I'm like in this encounter, and we've got to leave. I thought they were going to have to arrest me and get me out of the garden. But we moved from there to the pit where Jesus was held the night before His crucifixion. And then the encounter increased as we go into this pit. My friend that was with me pointed, he'd been there before, and there was a circular opening, almost like an aperture, a window, and above us, as we're in this like hewn out rock pit. And he points and he says, "That's where they lowered him." And as soon as I looked up, I saw Jesus's face in my face with the crown of thorns, bloody blood running down His face. And He mouths to me. I don't hear words. This is wordless. He mouths to me again: "Tammie, do you want more?" And the groan, travail, tongues, the whole nine hits me so hard that I hit the ground, and I literally had to army crawl myself to the other side of this pit so the rest of the tour group could get down in there. And out of me was coming like almost like Hebrew. I don't know Hebrew, but I knew Hebrew was coming out of my mouth. And in that moment, the Lord says to me, "I did not give my life on the cross as many think. I gave my life in the garden of travail long before I ever came to this pit. I agreed to lay my life down." He said, "I could have left this pit at any time, but because I made a choice in that garden, I stayed and I went and I finished the job." And so, in that place of travail, I began to realize Jesus is the greatest intercessor the world has ever seen. I begin to realize that it's from the garden of travail, the tears, the wordless place, that he would lay down his life. Now, pause for a second. We're talking about 3 encounters here. Fast forward 2 more months, 3 more months later, this is an incredible trip to Israel, 100% life changing trip to Israel. 3 months later, I'm in the bed 3 a.m. and I'm struck by the power of God. I sit straight up in the bed. It was as if a lightning bolt hit me, and the voice came from inside and outside of me that said one word, unspoken. And I began to connect the dots because 20 hours later, just 20 hours before that, there was a young man named John Allen Cho, who was 26 years old, who'd been martyred in India, reaching an unreached people group. So that's what we're talking about. There's these encounters that don't seem to connect, but we know God's painting a picture. And so I began to ask the Lord, like, how does a martyr, a 26-year-old who has whole life ahead of him, the word unspoken, and these encounters in Israel all connect. And the Lord began to unpack to me over the course of the next few years Romans 8 and the groan of the Spirit that would mark a believer in such a way that they would have no words but only be developed into a witness that would be willing to lay down their life for the cause of Christ, no matter the cost. And so it's the groan connecting with the being the witness of Christ that is willing to lay down their life for something greater.